Hello and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from with us today. I'm so excited to have you tune into this conversation. It's our first in the series of Lunch and Learns, and I couldn't think of a better guest to really kick off this series than Emma Cowling. Thank you, Emma, for being here with us today, all the way from the other side of the pond. I want to introduce Emma. She and I got connected on LinkedIn and bonded over the fact that we're both serving similar clients in our coaching businesses, but in very different ways. So in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about those individual ways we serve clients and the overlaps that we see in leadership. Because we both believe that women in STEM, women in tech, women in engineering deserve a seat at the table, right? And that we want to be resources in ensuring that they keep that seat at the table. With 1 in 2 female engineers leaving their careers and pivoting before the age of 35, that's a really big statistic. And so each of us is serving those clients in different ways. Emma has over 20 years experience in the tech industry, working as a developer, as a manager, as a leader, and now as a coach. She has been in your position and she has discovered that coaching is her calling. And by making the leap into the coaching field, she's been able to unpack a life of greater clarity and value in everything that she does. And that's her idea for her clients, is to be able to find that alignment within your career, wherever you want it to take you. Because let's face it, women are part of the future, and we're so excited to be part of that future. Emma, thanks for being here.
Thank you again. Sorry, I interrupted you right at the beginning.
That's okay.
For inviting me onto this. This is just, brilliant to be part of. And I didn't realize it was the first one, but it's an honor to be the first guest as well. Thank you.
Yes, of course. I used to work in the manufacturing industry, and we would have lunch and learns where we would be introduced to whatever newest style of pump was on the market, or, the best O-rings for your application. And they were always informational, but they were never really that convincing. And that's how these lunch and learns are going to be different. We are going to be providing convicting material to the viewer for how they can shape their lives to be more in alignment with who they want to be.
And I think the other thing that comes through as you're saying that is it's that showing up, the authenticity of just showing up and having a conversation, being open to explore some of these topics. Quite often when you have lunch and learn, someone's coming in with information to push at you, and they're not necessarily asking what you want to know. And we're just here having a conversation, exploring each other, and hoping people get some value from listening in. And I love that format. It's just brilliant. So
yeah, absolutely. Which, if you have a question for us, whether you're watching live or if you're watching this on replay, please comment on this video. We'll make sure that we get an answer to you, because that's important, right? We want to make sure that we're giving you the value that you want. So don't hesitate, drop those comments, or if you feel more comfortable messaging us privately to ask those questions, please do. Our inboxes are open. So Emma, let's dive into it. What challenges do you see women in tech facing as they want to pursue leadership paths?
So so I think one of the challenges is to be a leader, you need to have your voice, and you need to have your ideas, and you need to be willing to stand out and speak out about them. But when you're a woman in tech and you are trying to fit in and get listened to, and you're kind of dealing with people who are quite different from you, so a male dominated environment, it can be really challenging to get your voice heard when it's different. So you're constantly treading this line between being listened to and fitting in, and being listened to and speaking out and saying something that's new, and sharing your ideas and showing that's something that's different. So I think it's a particular challenge for us, because we're different, to get our ideas out there and be confident and get our voice heard, but still be in rapport with other people, challenge people, but have them listen to us. And I think that's a real challenge for us as leaders.
Absolutely. You're reminding me of a conversation I had with my husband early on in our relationship before we were married. And at the time, I was a people manager. And I spoke about how when I'm in meetings, when I'm in the decision making process with a group of other individuals, how I really have to pause and consider the way that I'm delivering my opinion so that it will be received. And he'd never really considered this before because in his experience of life, he just delivers his opinion, right? Yes, he wants it to be received well, but that he had never considered that he might have to change the way that he delivers that opinion so that it can be generally well received. And that's absolutely something that women are doing on a daily basis, on a moment by moment basis, is considering, and being agile, of course,
Yeah.
in how do I present my opinion in a way that's accepted and is still firm and strong, right? That doesn't convey any sense of doubt, which women can tend to fall into the pattern of behavior.
And I think there's something about male-dominated environments can become quite, well, they go from assertive to aggressive, depending on who's around the table. And if there's a group of voices who are disagreeing with each other, if you stand back and watch men having a discussion, it tends to become and feel quite aggressive. It's sometimes it's who can shout the loudest, who gets their voice heard by speaking over everyone else. And that's not our natural style. So, and I'm talking generalizations here, of course, because some women are fine with this, but generally, and for me personally, my style isn't to speak over, it's to listen and then put my perspective across. Now, to some people who are more in that mindset of to get your voice heard, you've got to speak loud and you've got to be aggressive and you've got to speak over someone, that can feel like I'm not confident. But actually, I am confident. I'm just listening and trying to get to the point where I'm ready to say my point and be heard and explain myself. And it's just that kind of difference in approach, which you see and you can observe, but you don't when you're in it and when you first experience it, it can be really, really daunting. So yeah.
So do you think that's a skill that women in the STEM industries need to practice, is that, sitting back, listening, preparing when and how to give your opinion on a decision? Or is it something that you feel we should practice both ends of the spectrum, right? Practicing the more aggressive technique in addition to the softer technique?
I think that's where it comes down to authenticity, but it's because it's important to do what feels natural to you. But if you don't try it, you won't know and you won't get any better. So it's the combination of doing what you're good at, but also honing your skills. So I don't think there's one answer. One of the things, an example I use with quite a lot of my clients on this is if you look around at, sometimes you can look around a meeting and you will see someone, male or female, in that meeting who is very quiet, very reserved, sitting back and listening. And when they speak, everyone shuts up. And that to me demonstrates that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to have an impact. And so it kind of draws me towards looking, okay, what is it that they bring? What is it that comes from them that means that people listen to them? Sometimes it's experience, but often it's just that sense of confidence in themselves and their message and belief in what's coming through and authenticity that's coming through. They're speaking from the heart that people then kind of tune into and listen to.
You're kind of touching on my next question, which is why authenticity is such an important aspect of leadership skill. Why do you think that is?
So for me, it comes to connection. So as a leader, it's all about influence. You're influencing people. If you're not influencing people, then you're not leading anyone. So you have influence as a leader, and to have the best influence, it works best when you're connected with people. So if you are actually out there connecting with people, tuning into their needs and showing up as you, that's when that connection happens. When we show up and we're not putting on a mask, we're not hiding ourselves, when we're open, then we connect better with other people. We're more likely to influence, we're more likely to move them and for them to follow us because they're seeing us for who we are. So for me, that's what authenticity is about. It's about stepping up and leading from your heart, leading from what's important to you.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Because we can attempt to establish a connection with someone else inauthentically, right? But it's at our receiving end that we feel that disconnect, where we feel this does not feel in alignment, right, with the path that I'm wanting to take. And it's because we're showing up in a way that is inauthentic. And I resonate with that strongly. When I managed teams of predominantly men, I took on very aggressive masculine leadership styles, and it always felt disconnected to me. And I would come home in just such a state of unhappiness, right? Because I spent the entirety of my day being inauthentic, but trying to establish those connections with people.
And a great example for me of this is when we talk about sales and manipulation in sales, and how ways that people are taught to sell can be very, very manipulative. It's about sort of getting into their world and selling to them and pretending that you understand them. And that for me is very inauthentic. But if a good salesperson is someone who actually cares about the person they're selling to and really checks, makes sure that the thing that they're offering is the thing that they need. And that's the authenticity coming through. It's believing and wanting the best for this person and the best for you, and combining and kind of coming up with that win-win between it. So that for me kind of illustrates it quite well.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think a lot of times authenticity, can feel uncomfortable, right? But really, we only get comfortable with something when we have data to back it up. And we have to find opportunities in that area of life. It could be in our careers, it could be in other areas of life too, right? But we have to give ourselves opportunities to get some data points of what it feels like to be authentic as we're engaging with other people, as we're shaping the opinions of other people, as we're trying to influence them towards the direction that we feel is best to go. And we need to have those data points. And that means that we have to be willing to take those tiny little steps of bravery or of discomfort in order to feel more comfortable in the long run.
And one of the things that I think comes up for me when I've talked about this with clients is there's this idea as well that we need to be authentic all the time. If I'm authentic, that's it. I'm just authentic, and I'll find that kind of that place. But I don't think that's possible. Sometimes we're in our thinking. Sometimes we're feeling insecure and we feel like we need to hide because there's something happening out there. We need to protect ourselves and we need to put that mask up. But the thing, I'm going back to what you were saying, it's about taking those small steps, isn't it? It's about kind of showing up as authentically as you can, as much of the time you can, and then letting yourself off if you can't. I mean, sometimes you've got to show up and people are expecting you to be bubbly. So you put on the mask because otherwise you're going to draw everyone down. But knowing that that's what you're doing and knowing that if you need to, you can step out of it. That's the kind of the bit that really helps, I think. And knowing that it pass.
Absolutely. And I think this is an important point because sometimes the challenge with authentic leadership and how it's perceived is that it could be unprofessional, right? And how do we balance a professional demeanor with also being an authentic leader, right? And that's completely possible. To your point, you can kind of step in and out of that authenticity, but in ways that are still making sure that you're prioritizing your own health, right? And keeping your team around you safe, right? So being able to really build that skill of knowing it's important for me to be a little bit more reserved, right? Or to be not inauthentic, but perhaps to be I can't think of a word better than reserved, so we'll say that again, that can be an important skill in still continuing to build the trust of your team, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you might step away, you might have a conversation and then think, actually, that wasn't me. I got caught up in something. And then it's a choice. You can go back and say to someone, look, sorry, I didn't show up very authentically there. Actually, I didn't. And that's the authenticity coming through. That's how you make it better. You're honest, you show up and you kind of say, hey, I got it wrong. And being willing to do that and knowing that, well, what's the worst that can happen if you admit that you got it wrong? Really, what's what's going to happen to you? And the best that can happen when you show up is that you gain that trust from your team, which is the important bit that in the leadership side of things.
Absolutely. This I feel is very important. That component of building the trust on your team, regardless of what your team profile looks like, right? Because when that trust exists, we have greater potential for creativity, for problem solving, for improvement, right? For productivity when that trust is in place. And there are always going to be things that challenge the trust. At times as leaders, we have to be willing to make difficult decisions and in trade-off analysis, right? But as long as we're coming back to the team and communicating clearly, then we can really continue to honor that trust at the core of the team.
Yeah, completely agree on that one. Yeah.
How do you think women can pave the way for different ways of working in this industry, in the tech industry?
So I mean, being a role model is so important. So I think I so often speak to people and they say, but I can't be a role model yet because I'm not yet enough of a leader. I'm not in a position to be so. And the thing that comes through to me is the thing that I often then say is, well, do you have children in your life? Do you have nephews, nieces, even if you don't have kind of your own kids? Do you have someone more junior than you? Or even do you have someone that's in your organization that you wish they'd behave a different way, in which case you can be a role model and show them the behavior that you would like to see. So the what we can do is step into our roles as a role model, and take that lead just of one person and start to speak out and start to show them and start to behave in the way that we think that as women we should see, we would like people to behave. So that's the kind of the first thing that I kind of put in there. And then the second one is just starting to question the norm, starting to kind of say, oh, okay, this way that things happen, is that the only way? Do we have to have it so that we make decisions in this particular way? Do we have to? One of the things that comes up is often is flexible working and being able to juggle your family alongside working in a kind of intensive full-on role, and just starting to question that and say, actually, if I had more flexibility with my working, maybe I'd perform better. So why don't we do that? Why don't we work in this way? Why don't we make the tech world more open to women by introducing flexible working and seeing what we get out of that? And it's just that kind of questioning, not in a way that you're fighting, but just sort of saying, have we ever thought, really, is this really the only way? So I think that's the power that you can have by just asking questions and getting curious about things.
Absolutely. One thing I believe is that we need to normalize the fact that some people are absolutely going to adore working. Yeah. And there are plenty of other people on our teams in which work is confined to the perfect little package we put it in, right? And that both of those are valuable to the team, right? Both of those deserve a place of representation on the team. That we've kind of gotten into this attitude that everything about our identity needs to be conveyed in our work, right? That it is the primary identity, and that only the people who are completely in love with the work that they're doing deserve to be advanced, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always healthy,
Yeah.
right? It might be healthy at an individual basis. Each individual person has the potential of deciding, yes, it is extremely fulfilling and extremely healthy for me to spend this much time working. I'd love to meet someone like that because I have not yet. But I believe that they exist. But we need the tension on those decision-making teams for being able to lead an organization, right? Of being able to say, no, not everybody is going to be willing to answer the phone at 1:30 in the morning. We need to have some balance in how we're creating this culture, how we're serving our clients, how we're solving problems in the world. That's very valuable for the organization.
Yeah. And I think we've fallen into the trap that more hours means more productivity. If we
Mm-hmm.
work longer hours, if everyone works longer hours, the company will get more out of us, we will
Mm-hmm.
produce more. But actually, it's not like that, is it? If we work all hours, then we start to kind of lose our ability to think creatively, to think resourcefully, to kind of come up with new ideas, to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And so, and when we all see this, when we're tired, we make stupid decisions that then we have to spend hours unpicking. Well, if we just
Mm-hmm.
recognized that we were tired and kind of gone home, whatever time of day it was, like turning up and doing a half day, and then at midday kind of going, do you know what? I'm just not functioning very well here. I'm not ill, but I'm actually doing more harm than good by being here because I'm going to
Yeah.
fly off the handle at someone, or I'm going to do this. Then actually, we can save a hell of a lot of work for us and be more productive in the long term. But that's just not the way
Absolutely.
it works, is it? That's
Mm-mm.
not the way it's been measured. It's not the way we've set it out. And I think there's a real challenge coming from the pandemic and people working at home that has started to challenge those ideas. And I'm really interested to see whether it continues or not.
I completely agree with you. I took a snapshot last week where I asked women who were engineers and also mothers if they could change one thing about their job, what would it be? And we had a variety of answers, but I was surprised that the one that came up the most was commute, right? That spending time on the train, on the subway, in our car is taking away from the time that we spend with our families. And we don't want to necessarily sacrifice our work, but we want to not have that dead time where we're not working and we're not with our family, right? And that by creating more flexible ways of working, that we can eliminate that dissatisfaction, that disconnect, that lack of fulfillment, and say, okay, when this employee is fully engaged, when they have that that fulfillment across the spectrum of their life, that they are more productive, they are more creative, they are more value add to our organization. And I think part of this too is, as leaders, really being authentic in how we physically lead, right? Recognizing that every team needs to see examples from their boss about how they are human, right? About how they need to spend time away from work, or how they need to spend time by themselves, or how they need to spend time with their family, whatever those priorities are, that can be such a relief for your team, and comes back to that key point that we've been making about building the trust within your team, that they can be authentic themselves, right? When they see you as an authentic leader, they can be an authentic employee.
I think there's something in when we're a leader, we feel we need to show commitment. We need to show that we're committed to making this happen. And I've fallen into the trap where that for me, that then gets translated in, I need to show up all hours. I need to be there for people all the time. I need to kind of work the hardest and demonstrate this is the commitment I want to see. But actually, that's not what commitment is. That's not really what we're looking for. What we're looking for is that people believe in their job and they believe in what they're doing, and they're willing to show up, but they're also committed to looking after themselves and showing up the best that they can. And if we just had, I don't know, I'm just kind of pulling this out, but let's say that everyone worked half the amount that they do now. So they work even 2.5 days a week, but they showed up during that time and they were fully switched on. You'd get more than double the productivity out of them, wouldn't you? It would just be like, how often do we show up and we're just not really there? We're thinking about something else. We wish we were somewhere else. And then those times when we do switch in and we're so fully engrossed in our work, wow, the results that we get are just amazing.
Absolutely. There's so much, under productive time that we have when we're feeling anxious about the things that we need to be doing that are work related or non-work related, where we're watching the clock, where we're buffering. My coach loves to use the word buffering. Are you buffering in your time right now where you think you're being productive, but in fact you're doing something that's really non-value added just for the sake of saying that you're working right now? And he always calls me out at the perfect time for that. So that's a good question to ask ourselves. Are we buffering just to fill time? And can we be more impactful in the way that we work when we are truly focused on working well, right? When we're supporting our body to be able to work well. You might be more engaged in the meeting if you take it while you walk, right? Well, you put in your headphones, you call into the meeting, and you're moving your body, and the creative juices are just flowing, right? But you never know until you give yourself the opportunity to explore yourself physically as a leader, as an employee, as a value adder to your team.
Yeah. And it's being willing to ask yourself those questions and tune into, well, what do I need right now? Because like you say, one day you might turn up and actually you're really engaged in the meeting and you've just sat there with everyone and it works. And then another day you might get that thing that's actually, I need to move around. So go with it, try it. But that doesn't mean that that's what you have to, how you have to show up to every meeting. It's just that it's listening to yourself right now. What do I need? And what am I going to do? Yeah.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining me today. I know it is the end of your workday, hopefully the end of your workday in England, but we certainly appreciate your conversation today. Again, thanks for being the first in our Lunch and Learn series. I'm so excited for this.
Thank you. It's been amazing. And it's lovely to chat to you as well and get to know you better through this. It's always fun for these conversations. Thank you.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're watching this and you have any questions for Emma about authentic leadership, about what it's like to work for 20 years as a woman in the tech industry, even if you want to ask her favorite hikes in London, in England, I know she is an avid outdoors woman. Please feel free to either comment on these videos or message her on LinkedIn. You can find her at Emma Cowling. If you have any questions for me, you can do the same. I can direct you to hikes I love in the States, or answer your questions about how you can lead with a focus on your physical self and how that can lend itself towards productivity, fulfillment, creativity, and peace, right? Like being at peace with ourselves. So until next week, we will leave you there. If you have any other comments for us in the meantime, don't hesitate to ask or drop them. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Bye.